Elliot woke up one night with his hand resting on someone else's chest. Not just anyone's, Marcus's. And the worst part? Marcus wasn't asleep. The silence between them was thick enough to choke on. Marcus's heartbeat pounded against Elliot's palm, rapid and alive, while Elliot froze wide-eyed, drenched in cold sweat, his pulse crashing like thunder. For a few unbearable seconds, they didn't move, didn't breathe. Then Elliot jerked back like he'd been burned, whispering a strangled, "Oh my God, I'm sorry. Before tumbling off the bed entirely. That was how it started. Not the sleepwalking that had been happening for weeks, but the awareness. Marcus had known. He'd been awake for several of those nights, pretending to sleep when Elliot stumbled into his bed half-conscious, mumbling nonsense, curling instinctively toward warmth. And instead of pushing him away, Marcus had just let him. But now that Elliot knew, everything was chaos. By day, the dorm was loud laughter, clatter, smell of instant ramen, but between Elliot and Marcus, it was only silence. The kind that hums. The kind that holds everything unsaid. Elliot avoided eye contact like it could kill him. He'd take his laptop to the library, stay out late, bury himself in assignments until dawn, terrified of closing his eyes again. Marcus tried to act normal, cracking jokes, tossing him energy drinks, but there was something behind his smile now, a restraint that looked painful. And yet, every night, Elliot still dreamed of that heartbeat. It wasn't like he meant to sleepwalk. The doctor had called it a mild parasomnia episode, probably from stress or exhaustion. "Don't worry," she'd said with a reassuring smile. "It's common in young adults. It'll pass." But the guilt didn't pass. The image of Marcus's stunned face haunted him. Worse, the memory of how it had felt warm, safe, right, made it impossible to move on. So Elliot started keeping records. A notebook by his bedside. Bedtime, 11:40 p.m. Dream, none. Movement, unknown. He set alarms for midnight, 2 a.m., 4 a.m. He tied a tiny bell to his wrist. Anything to stop himself from walking again. But when the bell rang one night, he wasn't the one moving. Marcus was. "Couldn't sleep," Elliot murmured when he woke to find Marcus standing by his bed, motionless in the dark. Marcus's eyes flickered with something unreadable. "Guess I caught your disease," he said softly. Elliot blinked. "What?" Marcus sat down on the floor beside his bed, back against the wall. "You've been avoiding me for a week," he said, voice low, steady. "And now that you've finally stopped showing up, I can't sleep at all." There was a laugh somewhere in there, but it cracked on the way out. Elliot didn't know what to say. His throat tightened. He wanted to joke, to say that's not how parasomnia works, but the words wouldn't come. Because he saw the truth in Marcus's eyes. This wasn't about sleep anymore. It was about missing something they were never supposed to have. The next day, the sky over campus hung gray and heavy. Rain streaked the windows. Elliot stared at his reflection in the cafeteria glass, hollow-eyed, hair unkempt, tray untouched. Marcus walked in with his usual swagger, laughing with teammates, sunlight cutting through the gloom when he smiled. But when his eyes caught Elliot's from across the room, that smile faltered. For one brief second, it was just them again. The room faded, sound drowned in silence. Then Marcus turned away. Elliot exhaled, shaking. This was ridiculous. They were roommates, not whatever this was turning into. But that night, when he finally collapsed in bed, exhaustion won. And the next time he opened his eyes, he was standing again, not in his own bed, but in Marcus's. Except this time, Marcus wasn't asleep, and Elliot was awake. Marcus stared at him in disbelief. "You're awake." I don't know how," Elliot stammered, backing up, but Marcus caught his wrist. "You weren't sleepwalking," Marcus whispered. Elliot's heart hammered. He could feel the warmth of Marcus's hand, the way his breath trembled between them. The air was thick, almost electric. "Marcus," Elliot said, voice breaking. "Let go." But Marcus didn't. He looked like a man fighting something invisible, some force bigger than reason. "You keep saying you can't control it," he murmured. But maybe it's me who can't. He pulled Elliot closer, not roughly, not gently, but with the quiet desperation of someone who's been holding back too long. Elliot's pulse exploded. His breath caught somewhere between fear and want. Then Marcus stopped, as if realizing what he was doing. He let go, stepping back like he'd been burned. "I'm sorry," he said, voice shaking. "God, I'm so sorry." Elliot couldn't move, couldn't think. Only that strange truth lingered in the air that maybe, for both of them, the line between accident and desire had already blurred long ago. The next week was unbearable. Marcus barely came home. Elliot tried to focus on class, but every smell, every song reminded him of that night. He started taking the long way around campus just to avoid the gym, where Marcus spent his hours now, punishing himself with weights and sweat. But the distance didn't help. It only made Elliot realize how much he missed the sound of Marcus's laugh echoing off the dorm walls, the way his hoodie always smelled faintly of cedar and detergent, the ridiculous way he chewed his pencils when he studied. And then came the message. "We need to talk." They met by the river behind campus. The air was sharp, cold enough to see their breath. The city lights shimmered across the water like distant memories. Marcus stood with his hands shoved in his pockets, face half hidden beneath a hoodie. "You remember that night?" he asked quietly. Elliot's laugh came out shaky. "Which one?" Marcus's eyes lifted. "The one where you didn't sleepwalk." Silence again. Heavy. Unforgiving. "I thought it was a dream," Elliot whispered. "I wanted it to be." Marcus's jaw clenched. "Why?" "Because if it was real," Elliot said, voice cracking, "then I wanted it, and that means something's wrong with me." Marcus stepped closer, shaking his head. "There's nothing wrong with you, Elliot." Elliot laughed bitterly. "Yeah? Then why does it hurt like this?" Marcus hesitated, then said softly, "Because you keep fighting something that doesn't need to be fought." Their eyes met, and in that moment, the air shifted. The fear, the guilt, the restless nights, all of it melted into something undeniable. Elliot took a shaky breath. "Marcus, if you don't step back right now, I won't be able to." "Then don't," Marcus whispered. And for the first time, Elliot didn't. Elliot didn't remember who moved first. Maybe it was the rain. Maybe it was gravity, but suddenly, Marcus's hands were on him, and his lips crashed into Elliot's like a confession too long buried. The kiss wasn't soft. It was messy, desperate, trembling with all the things they'd refused to say. Elliot's fingers curled into Marcus's hoodie, pulling him closer, the world around them dissolving into rain and heartbeat and breath. When they broke apart, gasping, Marcus's voice was raw. "Tell me to stop and I will." Elliot looked at him, at the water dripping from his eyelashes, the quiet terror in his eyes, and whispered, "Don't." And that was it. The point of no return. Later that night, back in their dorm, everything felt surreal. The small lamp cast a honeyed glow across the room. Clothes clung to their skin, damp and cold, but neither of them cared. They sat side by side on the floor, backs to the bed, wrapped in a single blanket Marcus had pulled from the closet. Elliot's mind was chaos, guilt, warmth, disbelief. "This is insane," he muttered. Marcus laughed softly. "Yeah, but it feels real." Elliot turned to him. "You know this can't." "I know." Marcus cut him off gently. "But I also know that for the first time in months, you're not running away from me." The words hit deeper than Elliot expected. He wanted to say something back, something smart or strong, but instead, he just leaned in until his forehead touched Marcus's shoulder. Marcus froze, then exhaled slowly, resting his chin on top of Elliot's hair. No one spoke again for a long while. Outside, the rain softened into a steady hum, a lullaby for everything broken but still holding on. The next morning should have felt awkward. Didn't. Elliot woke to the smell of coffee. Marcus was already dressed, leaning against the window with 2 steaming cups and a grin that could melt steel. "Good morning, sleepwalker," he teased. Elliot groaned, throwing a pillow at him. "You're never letting that go, are you?" "Not a chance." Marcus laughed, handing him the coffee. "Cream, no sugar." "You're predictable like that." It was ridiculous how domestic it all felt. How right. But beneath the laughter, Elliot felt something tightening inside him, a quiet fear that this fragile peace couldn't last. And he was right. 3 weeks later, everything fell apart. It started small, a shift in Marcus's tone. A tension Elliot couldn't name. Marcus started staying out late again, claiming extra practice at the gym. He smiled less, laughed less, and every time Elliot asked what was wrong, Marcus brushed it off with that same forced grin. "You're imagining things," he'd say. But Elliot wasn't. He could feel it, the distance growing, the silence stretching. Then one evening, Elliot found out why. He was walking back from the library when he saw them, Marcus and another guy, standing outside the gym under the floodlights. Marcus's hand was on the guy's shoulder, his head bowed. The guy was smiling, saying something that made Marcus laugh, that soft, genuine laugh Elliot hadn't heard in weeks. Elliot froze, his heart twisting painfully. It wasn't jealousy exactly. It was the fear that maybe what they had wasn't real after all, just a moment of weakness, a comfort found in loneliness. He turned away before they saw him. That night, he didn't sleep at all. When Marcus came in past midnight, Elliot was sitting at his desk, pretending to read. The clock ticked like a heartbeat. Marcus hesitated at the door. "Hey! Hey!" Elliot didn't look up. Marcus shifted his weight. "You've been quiet lately." Elliot laughed under his breath. "Funny. I was about to say the same thing." Marcus frowned. "Elliot, don't," Elliot snapped, spinning in his chair. "Don't tell me it's nothing. I saw you, Marcus, outside the gym." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus didn't deny it. Elliot's voice cracked. "So what was it? Was I just what? A distraction? Stop," Marcus interrupted, his voice trembling. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Then explain," Elliot shouted, standing up. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like I was the mistake you're trying to erase." Marcus's jaw tightened. "He's my cousin, Elliot." Elliot froze. "What?" Marcus's eyes burned not with anger, but pain. "My cousin. From Atlanta. He was visiting." "Jesus, you think I'd do that to you?" Elliot's throat closed. Shame flooded through him, cold and crushing. "Two didn't know." Marcus ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "No, you didn't, because you didn't ask. You just assumed the worst of me." Elliot sank back into his chair, covering his face. "I'm sorry." But Marcus didn't answer. He grabbed his jacket and left. This time, he didn't come back that night. Days turned into weeks. Marcus slept somewhere else, maybe a friend's place, maybe nowhere at all. Elliot didn't know. He barely functioned. The dorm felt too quiet, too big without him. Every time he passed Marcus on campus, their eyes would meet for a split second, then look away, like strangers who shared too much. Elliot wrote in his notebook again, like before. Dream none. Movement none. Feeling empty. He thought maybe that was what love really was, not the rush, not the kisses in the rain, but the emptiness after it's gone. It wasn't until midterms that fate forced them together again. Their professor paired them for a group project. Neither protested. They met in the library, awkward and silent, surrounded by stacks of books. Marcus spoke first. "You look tired." Elliot didn't look up. "I could say the same." Marcus hesitated. "Elliot, I'm sorry I yelled that night." Elliot finally met his eyes. "You had every right to. I was cruel." Marcus shook his head. "No. You were scared." Elliot frowned. "Of what?" Marcus looked at him, his gaze softening. "Of how real this is." The words hit Elliot like a punch. For a long time, neither of them said anything. The only sound was the faint hum of the fluorescent lights above them. Then Marcus reached across the table and placed his hand over Elliot's. "You're not the only one who's scared," he said quietly. "But running away doesn't make it easier." Elliot swallowed hard. "Then what does?" Marcus smiled sadly. "Staying. Even when it hurts." Something changed after that. They started talking again, small things at first. Homework, music, jokes about cafeteria food. But there was warmth in the spaces between words now, A cautious truce, fragile but real. One evening, as they packed up their notes, Marcus said, "Come to the gym tomorrow. We've got a game." Elliot blinked. "You want me there?" Marcus grinned. "You think I play better without my favorite distraction watching?" Elliot rolled his eyes, but the flush on his cheeks gave him away. The next day he went. The gym was packed, echoing with cheers. Marcus moved like lightning on the court, focused, fierce, magnetic. Elliot watched from the bleachers, heart swelling with pride and something deeper. When the final buzzer rang, Marcus's team won by 2 points. The crowd erupted. Marcus glanced up, searching, and when his eyes found Elliot's, he smiled. Not the careful smile from before, the real one. And just like that, something inside Elliot began to heal. After the game, they met outside, under the same flickering streetlight where they'd once kissed in the rain. Marcus was still catching his breath, sweat glistening on his skin. Elliot handed him a water bottle. "You were incredible." Marcus grinned. "You were watching the whole time?" "Every second," Elliot admitted. There was a pause, then Marcus stepped closer. "Then you saw me almost mess up that last shot." Elliot laughed. "You? Never." Marcus tilted his head. "Guess I just needed you there." The air thickened again, familiar, electric. But this time it wasn't pain that filled it. It was peace. Elliot whispered, "What are we doing, Marcus?" Marcus smiled gently. "Maybe we stop overthinking it. Maybe we just be." And for once, Elliot didn't argue. That night, back in their room, everything was still. Marcus sat on his bed, tapping his phone. Elliot stood by the window, watching the city lights blink in the distance. Then Marcus said quietly, "You know, you haven't sleepwalked in weeks." Elliot smiled faintly. "Guess I finally stopped needing to." Marcus looked at him, eyes soft. "Or maybe you just stopped fighting what you wanted." Elliot turned. "And what's that?" Marcus stood, crossing the room slowly until he was just inches away. "You." Elliot's breath caught. His heart did that strange, familiar ache again, the one that wasn't fear anymore. It was something else, something whole. And when Marcus kissed him this time, it wasn't desperate. It was quiet, gentle, like coming home. The weeks that followed were slow, almost fragile, like walking barefoot on glass that might break at any second. But for once, neither of them ran. They lived quietly inside the tiny world they'd built together. Shared breakfasts, half-burnt toast, late-night study sessions that turned into whispered confessions. Sometimes they'd argue about dumb things whose turn it was to take out the trash, why Marcus always left his towel on Elliot's chair. But even those moments had a kind of intimacy now, the kind that said we're still here. Still, the world outside didn't stay silent forever. It started with a rumor. 2 students had seen Elliot and Marcus together at the river that night it rained. Word spread fast in the dorms, whispered through hallways, turned into jokes Elliot could hear even when no one was speaking directly to him. "Is it true? Did you hear about the basketball guy and his roommate? Bet he only got that starting position because he's..." Elliot tried to ignore it. But words have weight, and by the 3rd day the whispers had turned into stares. Marcus heard them too. He brushed it off at first, people talk, let them. But when one of his teammates muttered something disgusting during practice, Marcus nearly broke the guy's jaw. The coach suspended him for a week. That night, when Marcus came back to the dorm with a split lip and eyes full of fury, Elliot didn't ask what happened. He just cleaned the blood off Marcus's knuckles in silence. Marcus finally muttered, "They called you a mistake." Elliot's hands stilled. He looked up, tears burning his eyes. "And what did you say?" Marcus's voice cracked. "That they didn't know what it's like to wake up next to the best thing that ever happened to you." Elliot laughed through the tears, shaky and broken. "You shouldn't have to fight for me." Marcus cupped his face gently. "I'm not fighting for you. I'm fighting with you." But the next morning, it all went public. Someone had posted a blurry photo online, the 2 of them holding hands outside the gym. The caption read, "Guess we know why Marcus skips parties." By noon, everyone on campus had seen it. Marcus's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. His teammates, his coach, even his mother called. Elliot could see the panic behind his eyes, that fear of losing everything he'd worked for. Elliot wanted to disappear. He tried to pack his things that evening, shaking hands, stuffing clothes into a duffel bag. But before he could leave, Marcus blocked the door. "You're not running away again," Marcus said firmly. "Marcus, this is your life. Your team, your future." "I can't." Marcus slammed his hand against the wall beside Elliot's head. "Do you think any of that matters if I lose you?" Elliot swallowed hard. "People are talking." "Let them," Marcus said. "They'll forget." "No, they won't." Elliot's voice broke. "This isn't some movie where everyone claps in the end, Marcus. This is real life. And real life isn't kind to people like us." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Then maybe it's time we make it kinder." Elliot stared at him, really stared, and for the first time, believed that maybe Marcus wasn't afraid anymore. Maybe he never was. The following week was hell. But it was also the beginning of something new. Marcus didn't hide. He showed up to class, sat beside Elliot, laughed out loud when he wanted to. When someone whispered in the cafeteria, he turned, smiled, and said, "Yeah, you got a problem with love." Elliot hated the attention, but he loved the courage. He loved the way Marcus made the unbearable somehow survivable. And slowly, unbelievably, the noise started to fade. People got bored. The photo disappeared under the weight of new gossip. Life went on. Elliot realized then, maybe survival wasn't about hiding. Maybe it was about existing loudly enough that the world had no choice but to accept it. Spring arrived. The cherry trees on campus exploded into color. One morning, Marcus dragged Elliot outside before sunrise. "Where are we going?" Elliot groaned, still half asleep. "You'll see," Marcus said, tugging him along. They ended up on the dorm rooftop, breathless from the climb. The sky was just beginning to blush with light. Marcus spread out a blanket, set down 2 cups of coffee, and sat cross-legged, grinning. Elliot looked around, shivering slightly in the morning chill. "This is your grand plan?" "Patience, sleepwalker." And then, the sun rose, spilling gold and pink across the city. Elliot went quiet. Marcus watched him, eyes soft. "Worth it?" Elliot smiled faintly. "Yeah." They sat there for a while, just watching the light grow. Finally, Marcus spoke. "You know what's funny?" "What?" "I used to hate mornings. Always felt like they came too soon. But now, I kind of like them." Elliot tilted his head. "Why's that?" Marcus smiled. "Because every time the sun comes up, it feels like we made it through another night." Elliot's throat tightened. "You make it sound easy." Marcus's hand found his. "It's not, but it's worth it." Later that semester, Marcus's team made it to the regional finals. Elliot sat in the front row, cheering like an idiot. When the final whistle blew and Marcus scored the winning shot, he ran straight past his teammates and kissed Elliot in front of everyone. For a split second, the gym went dead silent. Then, surprisingly, people started clapping. A few whistled. Someone yelled, "Go, Marcus!" It wasn't perfect acceptance. It wasn't a fairy tale. But it was enough. That night, back in their room, Elliot lay against Marcus's chest, listening to his heartbeat, the same rhythm that had once terrified him, the one that now felt like home. "You know," Elliot said softly, "if someone had told me a few months ago that I'd fall for my roommate, I'd have laughed in their face." Marcus chuckled. "And if someone told me my roommate would break into my bed every night, I'd have called the cops." Elliot laughed. "To be fair, I was unconscious." "Sure," Marcus teased. "That's what they all say." Elliot smacked him with a pillow. "You're impossible." "Yeah," Marcus said, grinning. "But you love me anyway." Elliot froze for a second. The word love hung in the air between them, trembling, raw. Marcus's smile faltered. "Too soon." Elliot shook his head slowly. "No, just right." Then he leaned in and kissed him, softly, like a promise. By the time summer arrived, they'd moved off campus into a tiny apartment with peeling wallpaper and a view of the city skyline. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Elliot got a part-time job at a bookstore. Marcus trained kids at the local gym. In the evenings, They'd cook together badly and fall asleep on the couch watching old sitcoms. One night, as thunder rumbled outside, Marcus turned to him and said, "You ever think about how it started?" Elliot smirked. "You mean me breaking into your bed like some creepy ghost?" Marcus laughed. "Yeah, that." Elliot traced lazy circles on Marcus's arm. "It's crazy. I used to think it was something wrong with me, like my body was doing things I couldn't control." Marcus smiled. "Maybe it was just trying to tell you what your heart already knew." Elliot looked at him. "And what's that?" "That you were never really sleepwalking," Marcus said softly. "You were just walking toward me." Elliot's chest tightened. He laughed quietly, blinking back tears. "God, that's so cheesy." "Yeah," Marcus said, pulling him closer. "But you love it." And Elliot did. More than anything. Months later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Elliot woke before Marcus. The city was still, sunlight creeping across the floor. Marcus slept beside him, arm draped over Elliot's waist, breathing slow and steady. Elliot smiled, remembering that first night, the fear, the confusion, the shame, how far they'd come since then. He reached for the small notebook on the nightstand, the one he used to record his sleepwalking episodes. He flipped to the last page and wrote, "Dream none, movement none, feeling safe." Then under it, he added one last line, "I think I'm finally awake." He closed the notebook and slipped it back into the drawer, where it belonged in the past. Marcus stirred, eyes blinking open. "What are you doing up so early?" Elliot smiled. "Just writing something down." Marcus yawned, pulling him closer. "Come back to bed. You're warm." Elliot laughed softly, settling against him. "You're insatiable." "Always," Marcus murmured. "Now stop thinking. Just stay." Elliot did. The morning light spilled over them, painting the room in gold. Outside, life went on: buses, laughter, the sound of the city waking up, but inside that small apartment, time stood still. For once, Elliot wasn't dreaming. He was exactly where he was meant to be. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.